Hello, beautiful ladies. One of the questions that I get a lot is how do I know if I'm in perimenopause? Now, the standard sort of medical viewpoint is that if you're 40, you're in perimenopause. I don't know if that's true. I see a lot of mamas, having babies a lot older than they used to. So I think that perimenopause, when we actually enter the transition, is very individual. But there are a few things that I can tell you to help you figure this out. Because first of all, your cycle being irregular is not the first sign of perimenopause, okay? My cycle did not go irregular until I was in my 50s and I was almost done. So for me, it was a lot later than when I went into perimenopause. So how do you tell if you're in perimenopause? Well, the first thing to know is that the number of eggs determines when you will go through the transition, the number of eggs you have. And there seems to be sort of a genetic component to that. So what you can do if you're able to is ask your mother, ask your grandma, ask your aunties, and see when they went through the change. And that'll sort of help you gauge. Some people go into the perimenopausal transition much earlier than others. Some people it's a 10-year transition. Some people it's shorter. It just sort of depends. The good news is that if you're in your 40s and you feel great, then you might be in perimenopause, but it doesn't matter because your body's doing fine, right? The only time we really care about perimenopause, quite truthfully, is if we still want to have children, obviously that plays a role, but is if we're having symptoms. And that isn't perimenopause, those symptoms, that's something called perimenopausal syndrome. Very different. Perimenopausal syndrome is when things get bumpy, okay? So if you're over 40, you're noticing things are changing in your body, you're noticing you're having symptoms, then you might have a little bit of perimenopausal syndrome going on. If you're noticing you're having a lot of symptoms, then you probably have perimenopausal syndrome going on. So what is perimenopausal syndrome? So what's happening in the body going from the fertility years to menopause is the body is transitioning where it makes estrogen. That's the big change. And it's transitioning the kind of estrogen that is sort of the dominant form, but mostly it's just the where that is the big change here. So right now, if you're still cycling, you're making your estrogen in your ovaries. As you go along and you start to decrease the number of eggs, your body stops making estrogen in your ovaries and makes them in your adrenals. It doesn't make the estrogen in the adrenals, but the adrenals become a big part of estrogen production. So, any idea what the adrenals do? So the adrenals are the glands in our bodies that make stress hormones, okay? So during this time, stress plays a huge factor in how smoothly we transition. Because as our ovaries stop producing estrogen, our adrenals pick up the job of making a precursor hormone that gets turned into estrogen in our fat. Yes, ladies, I know. I don't know if anybody just put two and two together. Why do we put on fat around this time? It's one of the reasons. If we don't have enough estrogen getting made, the body puts on more fat. If we're under stress, the body puts on more fat. So particularly around the belly. So our job during this time to ensure that we make this transition smoothly is to learn to moderate stress. So the answer to, are you in perimenopause? If you're 40 and you're starting to have symptoms, it might be starting to play a role. If you're 47 or 48, you're in perimenopause. If you're in your 50s, you're in perimenopause, there's no doubt about it. And what happens during this time that makes it more bumpy is that you have the effects of stress on the body. Stress causes you to gain belly weight, but now you have the effects of low estrogen on the body. So you have this double effect that really imbalances the body. Plus, your progesterone and your testosterone, two other sex hormones that are important to our body's health and function, they are also now being made by the adrenals. So it can get bumpy. One thing I want you to know is there's menopausal syndrome, there's also perimenopausal syndrome. So anytime once we are no longer making our estrogen in our ovaries, that we are in a high stress state, we have an illness of some kind, anytime our body is under a lot of stress, our estrogen levels can get thrown off. The further along we are in this transition, the better the body gets at kind of navigating it. But I've worked with 70-year-olds that were still suffering from hot flashes because their body still was under stress and it hadn't figured out how to make the estrogen it needed, right? Now, estrogen is not the only cause of hot flashes, but it is a major contributing role. It's the piece that gets added in at this phase of life, that low estrogen level, and also progesterone can play a role too, that causes us to get hot flashes and other symptoms. But stress is really the backbone. So if you're in your early 40s and you have some symptoms, let's get that stress level down, get your body balanced out. When I was 40, I went to my doctor. I gave her a list of symptoms I was having. She said perimenopause, perimenopause, perimenopause. By 45, I didn't have one of those symptoms. So because you're having symptoms doesn't mean you have to suffer through perimenopause. Perimenopause symptoms means you're out of balance in some way and you want to restore balance to your body. It's like a call. You know, our role is shifting, right? We're shifting from the role of keeping our species alive through procreation and making sure our little ones survive, physically survive. And now our role is shifting into teaching our younger generations how to survive, what they need to do to survive, right? So that role is shifting. Such a beautiful time of life. So it's a beautiful thing. These changes are happening for you, not to you. You will hear me say that a lot. They're happening for you, not to you. But if they're bumpy, it is a call forth saying, hey, to serve in this new way, you need to change some things. You need to learn how to do things differently. You need to address this body of yours. You are being called to make some changes, to grow in a new way so that you can really embody this next role as the wise woman in our culture. And God, does our culture need a wise woman right now, ladies? Let's claim these women, these wise women inside of us. Let's step into these roles, because if you look around at what's happening in our world, we've forgotten. We've forgotten the importance of the feminine to teach our tribe, our society, how to survive. It is time for us to step into these roles. Sending you so much love.